Why do you need to be especially careful when buying property on the secondary market? Buying real estate on the primary market and buying real estate on the secondary market are two completely different processes, and you need to prepare for them differently as well. And I'm not just talking about choosing properties on the secondary market, which requires a special approach so you don't end up buying a pig in a poke, but also about how to properly handle the paperwork for such a property. After all, buying secondary housing in Northern Cyprus is a whole art form in itself. I'll tell you how to master it in today's video. Be sure to watch this video until the end. At the end, I'll share a life hack that very few people consider, but it will help you avoid losing money when making a purchase. So, to start, let's define what a property on the secondary market actually is. This could be an apartment or a villa that has already been lived in, and the owners are selling it as is, fully furnished, to the new buyer. Or it could be a property that was built, say, 10 years ago, but no one has ever lived in it, and it's also being sold by the current owner, not by the developer. Or it could even be a property that hasn't been built yet, but is being resold by the first, second, third, or even fourth buyer rather than the developer themselves. All of these cases, the first, the second, and the third, we refer to as properties on the secondary market. We've noticed that buyers don't really care whether a property is from the primary or secondary market. What matters is whether the property is finished and furnished, or if it's still under construction. For your convenience, on our company's website, in the property search and selection form, we've added a checkbox so you can tick it and see only properties that come with furniture. Or if you don't check that box, you'll see properties without furniture. As you know, other companies meticulously copy us in everything, absolutely everything. And I know they're watching this video right now. Colleagues, please copy this as well. Do exactly the same on your websites for the convenience of buyers, so they know for sure whether a property is furnished or unfurnished, regardless of whether it's from the primary or secondary market. The link to our website with the property database and other useful information about Northern Cyprus and real estate in Northern Cyprus is in the description below this video. And since handling transactions on the secondary market is a complicated matter, many agencies simply don't deal with it. And by the way, they're right to do so. That's honest towards the buyers. But if you are buying a new property and later want to resell it, that is on the secondary market, and make a profit, then you should definitely make this purchase through the agency that will later handle the resale for you. Because if an agency, for whatever reason, doesn't work with properties on the secondary market, whether they don't know how, don't want to, or are afraid, you shouldn't buy real estate from such an agency. Otherwise, when it comes time to sell, you'll be left alone with this property and our market, which you don't know. And conversely, if you came with the intention of buying a property specifically on the secondary market, you need to choose an agency that actually works with secondary market properties, not just claims to do so. Otherwise, you might fall into the hands of realtors who will simply try to talk you out of the secondary market, and in the end, they will succeed, and you'll end up buying something completely different from what you wanted. You also need to have access to a database of properties on the secondary market. For example, we have more than 200 such properties, and over the past 2.5 months, 100% of our company's sales have been properties on the secondary market. That's because our clients either needed affordable properties, which is exactly what the secondary market offers, or they needed ready-to-move-in properties, which are also very hard to find on the primary market. Please write in the comments below this video what attracts you more, primary or secondary market properties, and what exactly guides your choice. You often ask me in the comments under our videos, which should you choose, primary or secondary market properties? And I don't have an answer to that question. It's a rather strange question. What would I recommend to all of you? I would recommend looking at absolutely all the properties available on the market. It's not difficult. It won't take you more than 2 days. Northern Cyprus is a small country. Take a look at both all the new builds and all the resale properties. You don't have to examine every nook and cranny of each apartment. But this way, you'll definitely understand what you need. For example, last month we had a deal where buyers came and said, we want a ready-to-move-in property. We said, let's look at everything that's on the market. We convinced them, we showed them the options, and they ended up choosing a property under construction, even though they had come here with their suitcases planning to stay for good. The question is, why did they buy a property under construction? The answer is very simple. In this particular case, this property suited them better in terms of location and price. The price difference compared to a ready property was so significant, about the same as 5 years of rent. They'll be renting an apartment for about a year. And with the difference between the price of a finished and an under construction property, they have enough money for paperwork, taxes, full furnishing, and even a small car. And they made the right choice. They bought a property under construction, even though they originally came specifically for a resale property. Now they'll be able to choose the finishing touches to their own taste. In about a year, they'll get the keys and move into their apartment. And in this case, it's the more correct, more reasonable choice. Here's another example, which is actually the opposite. Just yesterday, we had a sale. People came here to have a backup plan, to invest in real estate. They watched our video about how to invest properly, and they said, we want to invest in a property at the very start of sales, at these so-called closed sales at the lowest possible price. We showed them everything available at the start of sales, and we also showed them resale properties, and they chose a 2-bedroom apartment, fully furnished, with a guaranteed rental income, because right now it even costs a bit less than a studio apartment at the start of sales. Accordingly, they start receiving guaranteed income right away. This apartment is larger in area than a studio apartment because it's a 3-room, 2-bedroom unit. Plus, since they're buying it on the secondary market at a very good price, it will be easier to resell at any time, and they can be sure to make a profit from it. In other words, they're already making money right now when they buy because they're purchasing at a price that's about 50,000 less than a similar new property would cost. So my advice is very simple. Look at everything available on the market and make the right choice. Sometimes you'll choose a new property, sometimes you'll choose a property on the secondary market, and in any case, you'll win if you do it with the right agency and the right helpers. Check it out in the morning, check it out at lunchtime, check it out in the evening. It might be that in the morning and at lunchtime it's quiet, peaceful, and nice there. But in the evening, young people might show up with alcohol, turn on loud music, and you won't be able to live there. Or, for example, there might be a meyhane nearby. That's a tavern, yes, in Turkish. And in that tavern, music plays half the night, so it's impossible to sleep as well. Anything can happen. Talking to the neighbors doesn't help, as practice shows. Visiting in the morning, afternoon, and evening to see things with your own eyes really helps a lot. I highly recommend it. Sometimes when choosing a property, you might overlook some very important details. You definitely need to check for the presence of electricity and water meters. It happens that a property is on the secondary market, has been occupied for 10 years already, but the meters still haven't been installed, and people are getting electricity at a very expensive construction rate, which is 3 times higher than the regular rate. They are constantly having arguments among themselves about who used so much electricity. They don't understand how to split this one bill among all the apartments. You shouldn't get yourself into these kinds of problems in the first place. Or if the property doesn't have a water supply, it's better to know right away when buying that you'll have to deliver water there yourself by tanker for the rest of your life, and you won't have a water supply because the municipality didn't plan for it or the developer didn't include it in the project. You also absolutely need to check the documents, see who the owner is, what's going on with the building permit, whether there are separate certificates of ownership, and what the status is regarding the acceptance and commissioning of the property. Because there are properties that are already occupied and even connected to utilities, but the acceptance and commissioning process has never been completed. And the developer has long since closed down, they're no longer on the market, and most likely you won't be able to handle it on your own. Only if you come to an agreement with your neighbors, pool your money, choose a representative, and have them take care of it. But you understand how difficult it is for people to come to an agreement among themselves, especially when the majority of your neighbors don't live here year-round. And finally, here are 2 life hacks that we ourselves use all the time, and that will definitely protect you from losing money if you're buying real estate on the secondary market. The first life hack: before you pay for your apartment or villa on the secondary market, make sure that all service accounts for this property have been paid in full, 100%. Sometimes it happens that the service accounts are not paid. Sometimes the debts can amount to a huge 5-figure sum. And once you pay for the property, you will never be able to get that money back from the previous owner. He'll say, "You saw what you were buying, I already sold it to you cheap, leave me alone, I'm not going to pay anything." Or when they show you a receipt dated today, but it only shows some payment, he owes 15,000, but the receipt is only for 3. You see today's date and think, well, I guess all the debts must be paid off. But then some time passes and either the management company or the developer comes to you and says, but there are still 12,000 pounds in debts, now you have to pay them, otherwise we'll take you to court. You're the current owner, so you're responsible for these debts. And here's the second life hack. This has also happened on more than one occasion, especially when someone attempted to deceive our buyers, but they ultimately failed. Once again, that is because in secondary market transactions, we serve as reliable guarantors for both parties involved. The money goes through our company, so the seller is confident that the buyers won't cheat them on the payment, and the buyer is sure they won't be deceived when it comes to re-registering the property or receiving the keys to the property. So what did the former owners try to do? They show the apartment, and in another case it was a villa, fully furnished, in good condition, yes, used but with very high quality top-level appliances. And we make a note, appliances of such and such brands are included in the inventory list. But then, when we arrive with the payment and to hand over the keys, we are surprised to find appliances that do not match the inventory list or the photo and video reports we made initially. And we ask, So where is what we paid for? Either return it or let's agree on a discount equal to the cost of a new set of appliances. It's not a small amount, especially if we're talking about expensive appliances. There was also a situation where the deal wasn't handled through us, but when problems arose, they came to us for advice, and we discovered that an inventory list hadn't been made at all. And it seemed like a very respectable elderly British couple who verbally promised, "We'll leave everything as it is, all the furniture, all the appliances." They took not just all the furniture, appliances, and curtains, which you can't even imagine where you could use them. They even took absolutely, useless wires from internet cables that definitely can't be used. They'd already been ruined by the sun and they're worth next to nothing. They even ripped out the little hooks for hanging clothes in the hallway, leaving just holes in the wall. Yes, this does happen. To protect yourself, always make a very detailed and comprehensive inventory list and carefully check the property against that list, as well as all photo and video materials before you hand over the full payment for it.